You are joining me this morning on Lead with Scripture. My name is Dr. Maxwell Luba, and I am your host. It's a 15-minute segment on leadership. And the reason here is that we know that leadership is important. We know that nations, generations, organizations will rise and fall based on the strength of their leadership. Our goal for this segment and this program is to use the Bible to address leadership challenges. Why is that so? Every leadership challenge that you face can be explained by a principle from the Bible. There's a principle in the Bible that can explain all the challenges that you're facing. Our goal in this program is to find that principle to explain the leadership challenges that we are facing. I'd like to welcome you from wherever you are joining me. So if you're joining me from any channel, either the YouTube, the Facebook, or the X channel, I'd like to just say hello and welcome. That's what I want to do to my guest this morning. Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm excited to have you. This morning. I'm Dr. Maxwell Luba, and some people will say, I don't know who you are. Just a brief introduction. My first degree was in medicine. That's where the doctor actually comes from. So what do I bring to this show? Medicine helps us diagnose. That medical background will help us diagnose the issue. So that diagnostic framework will come from medicine. I also have a degree in leadership and strategy from London Business School. And so it brings that professional slant to this particular presentation. And I happen to pastor a church. So we'll bring the diagnostic framework from medicine, the professional lens from my London Business School and consulting background, and we use the scripture for my pastoral slant in order to make this program engaging. So I see somebody joining me from YouTube. Thank you. So if you're joining me from X or Facebook, just say hi and good morning, and I'd like to welcome you. I think because this is a 15-minute segment, I like to just go straight into this session because we want to keep it short, straight, and punchy. What do we want to do this morning is a topic that is dear to my heart, and I'm sure you also would learn it. So this is you Lead with Scripture. You can see the social media handles that you can follow us on this particular program, and you can forward it and share with others. So it's every Saturday for just 15 minutes, 8 to 8:15. And the question I'd like to address this morning, I don't know if it's in your heart, but I think it is in my heart. Being a pastor, a leadership coach, a strategy consultant, Nigeria is one of the most religious nations on earth. We have so many churches from a denominational standpoint, so many churches from a branch network standpoint, so many churches. But when you look at the nation, you come to that conclusion that the number of churches have not really impacted governance in the nation. Our corruption index is still quite high. And when you just look at Nigeria as a whole, with the number of churches that we have, the impact on society is not very strong. Now, that does not mean that I'm a pastor, so I can't speak against the churches that we have as a pastor, but you need to ask yourself, from an individual standpoint, we might have helped individuals. What about the system? Why has the system remained the same? And Nigeria is not an exception. Africa is the same thing. Go to Africa. We're very religious in this part of the world, and yet our religiosity, if I will use that word, has not affected the systems. So this morning, I want to go back to the Bible to show you a principle in plain sight that a lot of people are not aware of that explains the Nigerian leadership conundrum or phenomenon. That's what I want to do this morning from the Bible. And what we'll do is look at Israel. What we'll do this morning is look at the nation of Israel. You know, the nation of Israel is an amazing nation. First was the kingdom, then became a nation when Saul became the first king. Before Saul, it was actually a kingdom, but it became a nation. You know what I mean by a nation? Even though it was a nation, but with the kingship that started with Paul, it became like a nation. on the face of the earth. But when you look at the kings in Israel, you can put them in two buckets. The bucket that is led by David, and the bucket that is led by Jeroboam. So under David, you have people like Hezekiah, you have people like Isaiah, you have Asa also under David. These were people who lived right, followed the plan and the purposes of God. So righteousness was enthroned. Then under Jeroboam, Jeroboam was the first person that remember the two golden calves, because he didn't want the children of Israel to go back to Jerusalem to worship, and put the golden calf in Dan and the other place. That's what Jeroboam did. Then Ahab, with the wife Jezebel, led idol worship. Manasseh, with the wickedness that he did in the land. So now, in the same period, we had priests. They had priests, they had prophets, they had temple, same Jerusalem, same covenant, same God, but there was a difference in outcomes. And this, every time I see this, because I read when I was reading my Bible this year, and read through First Kings, Second Kings, First Chronicles, Second Chronicles, I found out that the outcomes in the land was actually determined more. Listen to this statement that I want to make, because it will help you. That the outcomes in the land was actually determined more by the leadership and not by the priest. Now, for some of us as pastors who might not like this statement, that the spiritual and moral health of a nation, using the Israel example principle, followed the king, not the priest, not the prophet, but the king. When you had David, worship was enthroned. When you had Isaiah, righteousness, Hezekiah, reforms. When you had Jeroboam, the people went for idol worship. When you had Ahab, they worshipped Baal. When you had Manasseh, they sacrificed their children under fire. So you see that the king has enormous influence. Enormous influence. Thank you. Enormous influence. I see some my friend from Cameroon. Thank you for joining this. The king had enormous influence. And what has happened to us is that we have forgotten the role of the king. This is where this particular series is. We are pastors, we are ministers, we go to church every Sunday, but you forget that idol worship in the land will be determined by whether the king is worshiping idol. Corruption in the land will be determined by whether the king is corrupt. And in this series, I would explain why that is so. So the lesson for today is that the king matters. Is the leadership variable that explains everything. The king, who the leader is, matters. That's the lesson for today, this morning. That when you look at the nation, if anybody tells you, don't bother about the king, no. The Israel template tells us that the king in the land matters. When you talk about Zerubbabel was a king in the land, and it was in his reign the temple then was rebuilt. And that's why God said to Zerubbabel, every time you look at it, you find out that there is a king in the land that institutionalize either righteousness or wickedness or idolatry. There's a king in the land that is involved in that. The king matters. Who the leader is, I don't want to say more important, because some people some pastors would attack me for that, but it's as important, if not more important, than even the pastors. Sometimes what one leader can do can be more powerful than even 10,000 pastors can accomplish. And you will see that the state of a nation is rarely determined by the number of its churches or clergy. If the state of a nation is determined by the number of churches, I'm sure that Africa will be the most developed nations in the continent in the world. Continent, Nigeria, Ghana, Cameroon, whatever, will be the most developed. So with the number of churches, the state of the nation doesn't reflect that, because the state of the nation is determined by the character, the competence, and the conscience of the people who hold power. When you have leaders without conscience, when we talk about conscience here, we're talking about moral guide, something that guides their decision making. When they know that this is wrong and I'm not going to do that. You see leaders who go into office and the first thing they want to do is acquire wealth for themselves. Those are leaders who lack conscience. Their conscience has been seared with a hot iron. So that the state of the nation is determined by the character, the competence, and the conscience of the people who hold power. So look at your nation, or look at even your organization, and look at the people at the top, and you can predict, because leaders are the prism through which we see the organization or the nation. I said that this is going to just be for 15 minutes, so let me bring this to a close. And what I've been saying here is that in any system, that system here, I'm using the nation as an example here. It can be the continent, it can be an organization, it can be even a family, it can even be a church. The character, the competence, and one more thing, the conscience of the people at the top is the single most important determinant of outcomes. In this series, we'll talk about how the leaders or the leadership culture. In this series, we'll show you that the single most important determinant is the character, the competence, and the conscience of the people at the top. You cannot vote the wrong people into power and pray for a miracle. It doesn't work that way. No, if it was prayer alone, we will not be going through what we're going through in Africa as a continent. So let me bring this. This is what I just said. That when leadership is broken, when you vote the wrong person, the person without character, competence, or conscience into office, when you elect a leader that lacks those three qualities, when an organization appoints a leader that lacks the character, the competence, and the conscience, or which is in that context, organizational citizenship behavior, the moral code that the leader should live by, then no amount of religious fervor, no amount of religious activity will fix the nation. The first thing you need to do is that you need to fix the leadership before you will fix the nation. You fix the leader fixes the system that enables the people in that system to thrive. So we need to get our prayers right. We cannot substitute prayers with poor governance. So because we have poor governance, we are deciding to pray. No, prayer cannot be a substitute for poor governance. It may bring comfort to people, it may sustain hope, and in Africa we're very hopeful. But in order for us to thrive, the lesson today is that the king matters. And let's not replace good governance with spiritual activities and fervor. That's what the lesson is for today, learning from the Israel example. So what is the role of the church? As I summarize my lesson for today, is that we must produce more than worshipers. I think the focus, what we see in the church today, is the size of the crowd, the numbers that we see every Sunday, every Tuesday, every Wednesday, every Thursday, every Friday for the vigil services that we have. So we measure our impact by the numbers that we have. No, that should not be the responsibility of the church. We should begin to measure our impact by the statement that we are raising, by the impact in society, the kings in the different spheres of authority that we are raising, not by the size of the crowd, but by the impact that we're making in society through the people that we are raising. So that should be the role of the church. Raise leaders that would influence society positively for good. That is the mandate of the church. As we raise people and they go into their workplace, they influence their workplaces, they influence the nation, they influence their state for good. The state of the nation is determined by the king. The responsibility of leadership is to appoint the right people. When I mean appoint, the responsibility of the church is to ensure that the right people get into the places of authority. If the wrong person gets there, no amount of prayer will determine your outcome. It's 8:14. I need to stop. Wow, this 15 minutes is looking too short and too loaded. But I hope that for those that are joined me this morning, there's one thing that you have taken. The goal is to just take one thing. And today, what we're saying here is that the determinant of what happens in the nation is a function of the leader. Next week, I will show you the spiritual principle that unlocks this. So we see that, is there a principle that explains that? And we continue the exploration of how leader shapes outcomes in society, in nations, in families, and organizations. My name is Maxwell Oba. Thank you for joining me this morning. See you next week, Saturday, 8 a.m. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. So do have a great day. You can follow, you can share the video to your friends. You can please like the page and follow me. Every Saturday we'll bring one concept. God bless you.